Cindy, do we have to be very specific at this point, or do we just put it into like a slush fund? Or? Clean it up before they. Now the geo bond problem, though, is we need it for to keep the tax rate. Well, we're screwed on public safety. I don't even. Yeah. Yeah. Put in like a beautification reserve fund or something.
Brian, we are ready when you are.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the September 15th ARPA Committee meeting. First thing we'll do is establish a quorum. Scott Willis.
Here.
And Misha. John.
Here.
I'm here. We are missing Troy. So I'll note that he is not here. Also with us today is Dustin Meeks, our legal counsel for ARPA. And the first thing we'll do is, hopefully everyone had a chance to review the March 24th meeting minutes. And if there's any changes, please state that now. Otherwise, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Do the roll call. Scott?
Yes.
And Misha? John?
Yes.
And me. That is 4-0. Thank you very much. One of the first things I just wanted to update us on for the record is we did have the federal audit of the 2022 ARPA fund. And I will say we got a glowing report. There were no findings of any kind of issues. So I'd really like to thank Misha, Dustin, John, everyone involved there. It was a happy day. They were very delighted. So our legal counsel and Misha are doing fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. Would like to do an update on our expenditures so far this year. As you know, we had pledged the $5 million to the YMCA. That development agreement has been signed, I believe, and executed from what I understand. I haven't seen the actual paper signed by the Y, but I know on our end we have approved the developer agreement there, which is the $5 million, and that will be in 2 tranches. So just wanted to update you guys on that. The only other things that we've had this year are in stormwater and, of course, our legal fees in those services. Which one, I kind of wanted to bring up this next issue, and it's going to take John Nail. John, thank you for being here, Head of Public Works, to discuss the amount that we had set aside, which was over $3 million for our stormwater for the downtown, and only a little bit of it has been spent so far, and we're looking to get an update on what the plan is and what you've done.
Yeah, sure. So happy to report that the project is moving forward in the design phase quite well. We recently had meetings with both Union Bible College and Westfield Friends Church separately. Those are key stakeholders in the area. Had a really positive meeting with Friends Church, kind of laying out our preliminary design, making sure that they were comfortable with what we were proposing, making sure we understood their needs from a facility perspective as far as traffic flow and kind of their long-term plans. And they were very much on board with kind of what we were laying out. So that was really helpful from them. Had some really good conversations related to some of the improvements we're doing on Union Street. So just to clue you all in, we are planning the Union Street improvements kind of on the west side. We have rain gardens. We're going to plan those on the east side as well to help improve both the aesthetics of Union Street, but also it really helps to downsize some of the storm sewer needs because we can hold runoff from the street over a period of time, and those rain gardens require smaller pipes and some cost savings there. We are also planning on burying all the overhead electric on Union Street. Again, an aesthetic improvement with the project. Talked to both Union Bible College and Westfield Friend Church. They were on board with that plan as well. I got a cost update from our consultant. We are right on track for that $3.1 million that we had estimated for the project. And really the only reason we haven't spent down more is we just haven't gotten to construction yet. We are on track to let this project in 24 in accordance with the ARPA regulations, and we will be on track then to spend that down completely by the end of 2026, likely spend down completely in 25, I would say.
Okay. So it's going to have a 2-year timeline for the construction part?
I would say we will let this probably in mid to late 24, and then we'd construct it in one season in 25 would be the plan.
Okay.
Yeah. There's still some coordination. We've talked to Duke. Obviously, it's not just Duke that is out there. They have underbuilds with communication lines on their overhead electric facilities. There's also a water main that runs sort of along the eastern curb line as well as a gas line. All of those are going to need to relocate out from underneath the pavement. And so there's some substantial relocation work that has to be done. We're working through that so that a letting in 24 makes sense from a contractor's perspective as well. It's always a problem when you don't have all your utility relocation completed and you go to letting because a contractor is naturally going to build in a lot of risk into their bid, not knowing when those utilities will actually be relocated. So I think a mid-24 to late 24 letting is going to be perfect for where we're at in the project timeline. And then that'll be 2025 construction season to allow for construction there.
Fantastic. Now, the project area, I don't know if you have a map. It's not just Union Street, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Let me see if I can pull up. Our GIS here, and I can kind of run through some highlights. And I've got some exhibits of the preliminary design that I can distribute to the committee as well. I don't have access to them today just because Brian's profile is logged on right now. He doesn't have access to the Public Works folder. But you're right that it's not just Union Street. So the project limits themselves are really Union Street from 171st all the way up to the east side of Jersey Street here. So that we have the outlet on the east side of Union. But importantly, Roosevelt and College, as well as Cherry Street, are included in this project. So we have drainage improvements on all 4 of those streets. College Avenue specifically, we met with Union Bible College to kind of understand their long-term plans for the campus. And we've got some nice improvements along College Avenue that works for their parking lot as well as pedestrian cross connectivity on College Avenue. And so that's been some really positive working with them. They've shared some master plans of their campus. So we're able to incorporate some of their wants into this project as well. And similarly, Roosevelt Street, a very narrow roadway today. That'll get widened to 2 lanes of at least 10 feet for travel lanes. That's going to require some loss of some of these diagonal parking spots for Westfield Friends Church, as well as some of these on the south side. We talked to them about that, and what we're going to do is actually just expand their southern parking lot, which was actually very desirable to them as well, to give those spaces back to them. And then there's also been some discussion, and I can turn on the parcel limits as well. So right-of-way wise, as we expand this Roosevelt Street, kind of eliminate some of these parking spots, there may be some right of entry needs to get the construction done. We're going to work out some of those agreements with Westfield Friends Church as well. Make sure it's a kind of one-to-one. Any kind of right of entry that we get, we'll provide some additional enhancements to kind of help them out as part of the project to kind of make the cost difference even out between organizations, so.
Okay. Bearing the poles, how far are we going down on Union with that?
We're gonna start at 171st Street and bury them all the way up to Jersey. So, and then the Jersey Street project buries the remaining poles on Union Street. So when we're all said and done, we'll have no overhead electric on Union from 171st all the way to State Road 32.
Well, I think that's a multiple pronged benefit there. I think
Agreed.
a lot of those are pretty close to the roadway, so.
Yeah, they are. They're close to the roadway. They're an eyesore. I mean, you've seen how Duke Energy's had to do some pretty substantial limb clearing along Union Street in the recent past to protect their facilities. And so, you know, it's going to be a benefit for everyone to get that underground.
Okay. Dustin, do you see any issues with this timeline or expenditure of funds or anything like that?
No, I mean, as long as you are under contract before December 31st, 2024, you'll be fine. And that, you know, a 2025 construction season leaves you the whole 26 construction season. So the objective is to just get it all spent before December 31st, 2026. So it should be just fine.
Great.
So we pay in advance if we felt like we were getting into a situation where it was bleeding over? Does it have to be expended, or does the project have to be, what's the guidance on that?
So the project doesn't have to be completed, but all of the money has to be expended out of the ARPA fund. So before December 31st, 2026, you want every dollar spent on an obligation that has come due.
Okay.
Are there any questions for John about this project?
Question. Okay, it comes with, due to 2024 budget, we was, so what exactly amount you expecting to spend this year, December 31st of 2023 for, you know?
There's probably only, so our contract with our consultant to do the design work is $335,000. So any money that's been spent is paying our consultant as they invoice us for their design efforts. I would expect to see probably another, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000 this year in design efforts. The bulk of the money that's been set aside is for construction improvements. And so you won't see those monies leaving until that construction season. So we'll let the project, there may be a small amount in late 24 for a mobilization to the contractor, and the bulk of the remaining money would be spent in 25.
Okay, because when we did the budget of 2024, we just estimate like $500,000 for this year, just the rest of the money for move to the 2024 budget, but we found out, and it's a YMCA half money, $2.5 million, expecting a pay by November. So we need a gateway next year budget need to be updated, because we thought that YMCA money will be paid 2024, but it's a move to all that money to 2024, and to find out later is a half payment expecting a November, end of November, to be paid at $2.5 million. So that case, we need to move back to budget $2.5 million of this 2023 and the 2024 just they have $2.5 million move decrease from Gateway. We had a Gateway 2024 is public side is $8.523,000 we did budgeted.
So,
So we need to move back to.
yeah, Misha, if I understand you correctly, you need a $2.5 million additional appropriation for the 2023 budget. You need to reduce Gateway from $5 million to
Yeah, we're
$2.5
gonna
for
be reduced.
2024.
We don't need additional profit. We already budgeted 2023, but just for next year, we didn't expecting to spend it for this year. So we just moved it to we did a move it to 2024, everything.
So
When it was a
Gateway just
budget.
needs to be reduced by that 2.5.
Right.
Then you can encumber or
Right.
rebudget everything for 24.
Right.
Okay.
Did you get?
I pretty much got that, but you guys are going to be the ones working on that for the most part, so I'll let you handle that, and I'll see it in the budget.
Okay,
But you guys know, between the two of you, how to handle that? Okay.
Yeah, and Misha, if you need like more, some cash flow numbers from me as far as when we expect certain money to leave, that's fine, I can provide that.
no, I just want to make sure you guys enough money to spend it this year.
Yeah,
That's all,
got it.
because the finance solution was asking how much exactly do you need to leave for 2023? So
Yeah.
I say estimate for ARPA money 500,000, just enough to rest of move to the next year, because that's what we thought. But that's what the finance solution put it in $500,000, leave it 2023, and rest of them all go to 2024 budget. Then we find out YMCA will be gonna be paid this year, so we need to move around
Yeah,
again. Okay,
sounds good.
thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, especially taking care of that. I'll move on, unless there's anything more from John that we need about that stormwater.
Nope,
No, we're good?
all good.
All right, fantastic. I guess we'll move on. So as we know, the State Board and others have said now we don't need to keep that full 10% for audit costs. And as you know, in our plan, we have that set aside right now, currently still, for audit. So we need to discuss how we want to spend that additional amount that will be not needed for the audit. So, anyone have some thoughts right now? I'm sure Public Works does.
I have one suggestion, I suppose. So we have had several accidents at 181st and Grand Park Boulevard over the last now 5 months since we've opened it, maybe 6 months now. We are building 181st and Wheeler Roundabout. We were funded through the MPO for that project. We are pushing to try and get that done still in the summer of '24 because of the location of that particular intersection, both south of Grand Park and on an east-west roadway that's used by the schools. We know that that needs to be done in the summertime under a closure when school is out of session. So we're trying to push to get that done by 2024. If not, it'll move to the summer of '25 if we can't get all the utilities out of the way in time. While we're doing that roundabout, and really we need Grand Park Boulevard to be open for Grand Park traffic while 181 and Wheeler's closed. But I think long-term, there needs to be a roundabout at 181 and Grand Park Boulevard. We've done several safety improvement projects. We still have had, at least in the last month, one more accident there, despite lighting improvements, additional signage, additional pavement markings. Frankly, we're kind of scratching our head a little bit because we look at this as what we would expect to see from an accident perspective. The actual number of collisions is way higher than we would anticipate based on our engineering judgment. So I think long-term solution is a roundabout at that location. I would probably try to do a design similar to 171 and Cary, not nearly as compact, certainly, but in the sense that we would use curb turnouts and existing roadside ditches to help reduce the cost of the roundabout itself. I think we could get something done for about $1.2 million at that intersection. I recognize that's more than $800,000, but $800,000 would certainly go a long way to completing that project. So I would, from a public works perspective, that would be if I was gifted $800,000, that would be my number one choice on how to use it.
I'll have to say, I mean, I do agree with you on the importance of that project. And we have further development coming at that intersection that's in the process right now, being reviewed by Planning Commission. So I see that as a need at some level, and whether it gets funded by this or something else that needs to be taken care of. Does anyone have any thoughts about that or any other uses right now? Or are we looking at limitations? From what I understand, with the guidance that we've received from the feds, we are not really limited in that regard.
No, yeah, so in the revenue loss space, you essentially can do anything that would be a normal function of a local government. So I mean, the universe is really quite vast in terms of things. The one question I might have, just based on what you have said, would that project be able to, to be through letting and into like contracted prior to December 31st, 2024, or would that be premature based on the conflict with the other roundabout construction?
So understanding that the utilities out there are all relatively new because of the development in the area, we have a good idea where those are located. I think we could design it in a way that would really reduce utility relocation needs so that we could reach a letting by the end of '24 still. Certainly, we need to get going on it very quickly, though, to hit that letting date.
But we'd also need to acquire some land in that one, correct?
Yeah, so we have, actually, I can, let me pull up my GIS again. And nothing else, so everyone knows where we're talking about. So certainly on the northeast corner, we do not have right-of-way at this intersection. But you'll notice that there are corner cuts that were dedicated by the developer, the Wheeler Landing developer, as part of their platting process. So one of two things. This is D&W Farms that owns this northeast corner. Ideally, we would acquire a small corner cut from them to kind of center that roundabout in a way that makes sense. I haven't started the conversation, but certainly we could potentially approach that landowner and see if there was a willingness for a dedication. I would argue that they benefit from some of the infrastructure improvements in the area. So potentially that could be an opportunity for a quick right-of-way acquisition. Otherwise, we'd be shifting the roundabout further west to avoid that corner. Probably not ideal from a design perspective, but it could save time from a project development timeline perspective.
How much you think expecting like an estimate cost of that?
I would say about 1.2 million.
Okay, I cannot speak for everybody, but somebody brought attention that the money possibly can use, I don't know, I'm asking Dustin, can you use a repair historical building, like a fixable, the money can be used to fix a historical building inside or
Yeah, I don't think that there's any reason why you couldn't preserve historical structures. Is it owned by the city?
it can be.
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay, so I just brought up some, it's not really, it's just I heard talking, it's not officially talking, but it's the green building out there. If it moved, the moving costs already talked about it, but repair inside of the fixture or something have to move, maybe they can be used, this ARPA money can be used as some of them. I don't know, I'm just asking him.
Well, and that's going to be an important project too, obviously. And that's why I wanted to bring up all these things in committee today. The one thing I will say about that is in terms of going back to the goals of this ARPA program and the money that we've received, I don't know that that actually is probably, and I know we don't have to look at it this way, but in terms of the spirit of what this program has been, I don't know that that is actually what I would consider a highest and best use. Again, it needs to be done, and I know that we will find a way to get it done, but in terms of its benefit to the community and health and safety and those kind of things, I think that, at least, and again, this is just my personal opinion, that an infrastructure project that will actually improve our public safety might be a better use of these funds. And again, just a personal opinion, but I know that we will want to see that redone, for sure. Anyone else have any ideas that they want to explore with these funds? And if we even want to assign them to something just yet?
That would be my suggestion, is that you go ahead and you reserve that and kind of let some of these things play out. We don't know what we don't know, and there might be an opportunity because there's a lot of activity, as you've seen in that list, of things that are about to happen. as we tighten up those priorities, it might come in, it might be very helpful to have that to expedite something.
Right.
Because this is cash we could appropriate immediately to something that needs to get done.
So we, yeah,
Needs to get done.
we've got a long list of infrastructure projects that John and I are, we haven't really started yet. We've been talking about, you know, coming up with our top 10 of projects that we want to get funded, and we want to get it done sooner rather than later. Maybe just for the sake of the timeline, the constraints that we're under, is to take that money and dedicate it to an existing project within Public Works, and then take that balance. I don't know if we can do this, just playing with numbers, but put the money in, take the money out into a reserve fund for future capital projects or infrastructure projects that we've got coming down the pipeline, because we know the list is long and it's expensive. It just helps keep the cost down and what we know we got to do around infrastructure.
And one thing I'll just add is that if we know that we need to do something in the near future about this intersection, what I can do, I've got some money still in the budget in '23 for consulting services. I can go ahead and get topographic survey going. That's a lead time item. We can pay for that outside of any ARPA funds if you choose to appropriate those to this project or not. It's money that we're gonna have to spend one way or another, so we might as well get that going now. And then that way, if you guys do decide on 181 and Grand Park Boulevard as a use for those funds, we'll be a little bit more shovel ready for that.
Okay. Yeah, we did have a combination meeting with the city council and the RDC and discussed this priority list of infrastructure projects. And so we do have rankings on all of those, and you know, you look across this and you're like, wow, there is a lot of needs and a lot of things that we could be using money for. One of the problems with this one specifically, though, is we don't have enough to, you know, 800,000 is not going to be enough to do, I don't think, any of the projects on this list directly. And it always leaves the question, though. We often need a match to get projects done, and sometimes fairly quickly when those opportunities come. And we're also going to be facing a new administration, a new council that potentially has different priorities. So I'm kind of torn on this one because I'd like to see this roundabout done. I think it's important. I've heard a lot of community members contact me with safety concerns. But again, I also realize the benefits of being able to keep that in the reserve.
I don't mind spending it on that project if we think we can get it done.
I
I'm
do.
just simply looking for a way to plug the money into Public Works and then back it out in some other way. I just don't want us to be under the gun. I don't want to shortchange the project because we're trying to cut corners to spend the money. I
Right.
think there's ways we can, if we want to dedicate it towards this project, pull the money in, use it for some other project, and take the money out of that project and put it back for this project so we can do it thoughtfully and do the right steps with land acquisition and all that, so we're not in any time crunch.
I think a way to meet all those expectations is, number one, John, start moving on that roundabout, because we know we got to build it someday anyway. You kind of hold this money until you figure out more about some of the existing projects, and then it could flow back into this roundabout project. If that timing's not working, then really any locally funded project, you could do exactly what Scott's saying, is if it's $1 million and it's coming out of impact fees, you can just assign this ARPA money to it, reserve the impact fees for another project. So that way you're guaranteed to spend it down in time, and we're still moving the ball forward on some of these others. Does that make sense for today anyway?
It does. Administratively, do we need to amend our plan to take that approach, or could we potentially leave it as is?
I don't think that you need to amend the plan until you decide to do something with it. So if a wait and see approach is going to be the approach to it, at the point at which you identified the alternative expenditure, then we should amend the plan to reflect that alternative expenditure. that is gonna provide kind of that fungible flow of money for this project at a later date. But I don't think that, if we don't know what that money is gonna be used for, then there's not a need to amend the plan, not until a decision has been made. And an option is, sort of the most fungible option, though, and I'm sorry, Misha, I'm sure that this is not easy, is payroll. You could always do that. You could just offset the city's payroll for $800,000, and that would free up general fund monies, then to do this project, and you spend it, bi-weekly or monthly, every pay period. So that's always an option.
That'd be a little bit more complicated in terms of administering.
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
that's why I started with an apology to
I
Misha.
like it as an option for its flexibility, but it
Yes,
does,
yes.
yeah,
That
creates
is-
extra challenges for their.
It becomes a crash option, if you're really running out of time.
Yeah, maybe we identify the burn rate on that leading up to the end of 2026, and that's a last, like a emergency way of using the money. Certainly rather spend it directly on projects for accounting purposes for Misha's sanity.
There's going to be a whole new administration council, and I hate to burden anyone with having to deal with that, especially over time.
John, do we have any projects coming up we know we could spend $8,000 with the snap of a finger in the next 6 months?
Well, I mean, the easiest way to do it is just resurfacing. We have a resurfacing program every year. Some of that is actual full depth sort of reconstruction type work. We could, on any given year, spend that kind of money on that kind of a project. If you're looking for something a little less maintenance related and a little bit more improvement related, we're going to be working on finalizing this Oak Ridge turn lane, guardrail remove and replace, and the trail connection. That's a kind of a remnant of the trails development that didn't get completed with that project. We actually already bid that one out, but the contractor will be doing the work in the near future. So I don't think that covers the full $800,000, but it's several $100,000 worth of work.
How about this? Because we're going to have a list of 10 projects that we're going to want to fund. Why don't we give this $800,000 to Public Works to get the design started on that list of projects? We know we got it. We know we're going to do it. Let's be aggressive. Let's spend that money in 2024. Let's dedicate the money to start farming it out to the firms to do the design work, and we'll just stretch as far as we can. And then we can just allocate it as an ARPA committee to Public Works future projects. And then you've got a pot of money to go and get these guys under contract to get the work done. And then we'll figure out which ones we want to do next. I mean, you and I need to sit down anyways and go through that anyways. We can prioritize. I don't know how far $800,000 stretches, how many projects we could get designed, but maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, but let's pick our top 3 and let's get it going.
Got it. That's a good
Well,
way
if we go
to,
over, then it just comes out of
yeah,
some other budget.
road
line.
impact fee consulting or something like that, yeah.
Because I think then we can justify that's giving a bang for the dollars on the taxpayer, and everybody benefits from that.
It's a good negotiating piece with the consultants too, when I need them to cut their fee another $25,000 because we got to stay within the ARPA budget, so.
There you go. There you go. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that'd be a clean way, and we
Just
can
my
definitely spend
opinion.
it next year.
I think it's a really good strategy. You got a lot of projects that need to get kicked off that don't currently have a funding source, or we haven't really assigned funding to it. We all know that design and land acquisition and utility relocations are the longest piece. Getting going on design will kind of also kick off the 2 longer lead time items, which is land acquisition and utility relocation. So I think that's a really good strategy if the group is comfortable and you could do it now, and he could kick off projects by the end of this year, spend it by the end of next year.
One more thing I had to actually add in here, and we don't have any reps from public safety, but right now there's also some huge needs with both those, police and fire. And I'm talking construction or refurb and those kind of things. Does it make sense to actually put it there and free up some of the other funds?
It could, both of those, the two major projects that are going, which is the headquarters and Station 84, are reflected in your 24 budget. Yeah, you can shuffle the deck chairs however you want. I think optically you want to assign this to something or a few things that are showing the community that you're taking this money that you could have done anything you wanted with and you're putting it into their needs. I think that looks pretty good for the future. So, but however you want to do it, I'm indifferent.
I will say that part of the police station headquarters project, at least in the early concepts that we're looking at, includes a roundabout at John Dipple and Grand Park Boulevard as well, which is the main entrance to those headquarters. So if you want to also include a public safety aspect to this divvying of $800,000, the design of that roundabout could be one of those projects that we use money on. And you get that public safety component in there because it's going to be the gateway or the really the main entrance into the police station headquarters. Just throwing that out there.
Half a dozen, one or the other to me. I think we're all talking the same things here. It's public works. It's paying for something that maybe we don't have on our radar screen right now that we know we really need. I like that. And I don't mind doing it the public safety way that we're going to have to bond those anyways, quite frankly. And so I don't know if that really moves the ball, but it accomplishes what we're trying to accomplish, which is spend the money. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the roundabout in front of the police station was actually included in the overall contemplated.
Yeah, so the
estimate.
roundabout itself at the intersection was not part of the police station headquarters. There's kind of a little bubble type curved intersection that comes off of it as part of the main entrance as it's proposed today. But we had not ever included that into the design aspect. And to John's point, it does have some public safety benefit. These two intersections that we're talking about probably need to be built about the same time or at the same time, and preferably before the police station opens. As it is today, the apartments that are on the west side of that will feed out into 181st Street, so there really is no development in that field between the two. If we can build it at or at the same time as the police station is being constructed, then when it opens day one, everything would be done and functioning. So that's probably a pretty good strategy.
so Dustin, how specific do we have to be with this in terms of documentation from the council or from ARPA committee's perspective?
I think that in terms of the plan, if you wanted to allocate the $800,000 to design services for the Public Works Department for infrastructure projects that the Public Works Department was going to identify, that would be okay. I think, that if we can identify the projects that are going to get priority, that's maybe a small step better, but I don't think that that's necessarily required. If what the committee wants to do is give it to Public Works to use for design costs on prioritized infrastructure projects.
So we can make that change now, and then the next council, next committee, on the back end, once we've allocated that money, could come back and just take it to that next step of documentation, just to make sure that we're overkilling the auditing piece of that.
Yeah, I think they could do that.
So does everyone like that approach? And that approach would then need an amended plan?
Yeah, I think if the council wanted to basically identify that Public Works was going to start making decisions about how that money was going to be expended, you would want it to be approved in the plan for that purpose, and then also appropriated to those purposes, so that Public Works could then actually move on those things when the time came.
Okay. So perhaps we can try and get that done before the end of the year, so the new council has already got that in place. Would be,
Yeah, and I can circulate an updated plan to that effect.
Okay. Seems like it'd be a fairly small amendment to the plan, so it wouldn't require that much. Do we want to take a vote on amending the plan to reflect those kind of things? And is there a motion, I guess?
I'll make a motion to amend the plan to allocate the balance of our funds, I don't know the specific dollar amount, roughly 800,000 to Public Works for infrastructure project design work.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Let's take the roll on that. Scott?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Misha? Me, yes. So that is 4-0. We will send that to, well, we'll get a draft amendment going, and then we will forward that draft amendment to the full council, as long as that's okay with everybody. All right, well, that's that. Does anyone else have anything that they want to add, or any legal topics to bring up?
So I did want to make one note. Since our last meeting, the federal government ended its COVID-19 public health emergency declaration, and commensurate to that, the end of the federal government's emergency declaration, Treasury put out a new set of frequently asked questions, the only addition of which was that they have identified that at the time at which the public health emergency ended, premium pay programs that were being reported in the premium pay expenditure category, that was the last date on which you could count working days for people receiving premium pay. And if I'm remembering right, our premium pay program is in revenue loss, so that is not an issue. But that's the only change that I thought could be relevant that is in the FAQs. Treasury has introduced their new interim final rule for the expanded eligibility categories, and it's terrifyingly long, but I won't get into it because it's entirely irrelevant to. There's nothing in there that would change what Westfield is doing with it. But
If we were over 10 mil.
if
then
you were
we
over
would
10
have
million,
an
this meeting would get long because they've introduced a bunch of new things. But being that we're expending all of the money in the revenue loss expenditure category, nothing else of significance from Treasury.
Okay, great. Anyone else have anything? One thing I did want to bring up, if you recall, we had the nonprofit agreements, and they had actual reporting requirements, if you recall, on those. And the language in there did say that the earlier of 5 days following the day on which the full amount of the grant funds expended, or 5 business days after spending period ends, recipient shall file a report with the city that includes the amount of the grant funds spent by the recipient during the spending period, and sufficient detail describing how the funds were used and the supporting documentation. If it's okay with everybody, I'd like to send a reminder to those recipients that they need to have that into us to comply with that before the end of the year. I think they all have expended their funds, and we should have that detail for the council. So I just wanted to bring that into everyone's mind that that needs to happen in case we've forgotten. Everyone okay with that? Okay. I don't think we need to schedule next meeting, do we?
I don't think so.
No, we won't do that at this time, I guess.
And I would definitely like to see us close up any loopholes before we exit off of council. I don't want to hand the next council loose ends, as little as we can. We may have a few, but hopefully not many.
I agree, yeah, and we're going to have, there'll be all new appointments on here, of course, so it'll be a new cast of players, but hopefully that we will have everything pretty much tied up by then, so there won't be too much for them to have to do. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Scott? I'll do the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Everybody okay with adjourning? Aye, 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 aye.
Yes.
Great. All right, we are adjourned.
Hey, John.
Thanks for coming,
I know
Justin.
we talked a lot about